The moment Jasper leaped onto the stage, everything stopped. The music, the clapping, the confetti floating through the air. Hundreds of students froze mid-cheer, and the principal, Mr. Harlan, stumbled backward, caught off guard as the school's K-9 unit locked eyes with him and let out a low, thunderous growl. No one could have predicted what would happen next. Jasper didn't lunge or attack. He just stood firm in front of the microphone, chest heaving, his bark growing louder, faster, more frantic. His gaze was fixed like a laser beam on Mr. Harlan's jacket pocket. And just like that, the cheerful farewell party turned into a silent battlefield. Every parent, every teacher, every student watched in disbelief as the school's beloved German Shepherd, trained for narcotics and crowd control, ignored every command from his handler, and wouldn't leave the stage. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a coincidence. It was the beginning of something none of them were ready to face. 2 days earlier, the end-of-year energy buzzed through the halls of Mill Creek Middle School. Lockers slammed, kids passed yearbooks around with sloppy hearts and Sharpie scribbles. 8th graders were finally graduating. Emily Carter, however, wasn't feeling the celebration. She sat quietly on the concrete bench near the gym, her knees drawn to her chest. No signatures on her yearbook. No party invites in her hand. Her dark hoodie covered the bruises she wouldn't talk about, and her eyes kept shifting toward the administrative building. "Hey, you good?" asked Officer Miller, crouching beside Jasper as the German Shepherd wagged his tail. Emily looked up and forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." Jasper tilted his head and slowly approached her. He sniffed gently at her backpack, then her wrist. Emily's body tensed. She flinched slightly. Miller didn't miss it. "Jasper's friendly," he said softly, watching her reaction. "He's trained to pick up on things that don't look right." Emily looked away, her voice barely audible. "He's a good dog." Before Miller could say more, the school bell rang. Students swarmed the courtyard, shouting, hugging, running in every direction. Jasper let out a single short bark, not aggressive, just alert, and returned to Miller's side. From the second-floor window above them, someone else was watching. Mr. Harlan stood behind a half-drawn blind, sipping coffee from his best LOA, principal ever mug. His eyes weren't on the crowd. They were on Emily. At Mill Creek, Mr. Harlan was the kind of principal people trusted. Polished, eloquent, and always present during school events, he had a way of making people feel safe, especially parents. He ran the school like a tight ship and often said, "We don't just teach here, we protect." No one questioned his long hours in the building. No one wondered why certain rooms stayed locked, and no one, not even Emily's mother, suspected that the reason Emily refused to be alone after class had nothing to do with social anxiety. The farewell celebration was meant to be perfect. Rows of foldable chairs stretched across the auditorium. A slideshow with baby photos played on a projector. Parents filled the aisles with bouquets and cameras, eager to document the final moments of middle school before high school swallowed their kids whole. Emily sat in the 4th row, legs trembling, hands tightly gripping the hem of her hoodie. Her eyes darted across the room like she was looking for the nearest exit. Jasper, meanwhile, was stationed near the stage. Normally calm, the dog seemed restless. He shifted weight from paw to paw, ears twitching at every small sound. "Easy, boy," Miller whispered, patting his side. Then Mr. Harlan walked onto the stage, and Jasper snapped. He barked once. Loud, then twice. Louder. Then, like a switch had been flipped, he bolted past the podium, up the steps, and planted himself between the principal and the audience. His body was rigid, his tail stiff, and he growled with such force the floor beneath him vibrated. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Officer Miller, please remove your dog from the stage," Harlan said through gritted teeth, still trying to maintain his composure. But Jasper didn't move. Instead, he barked directly at the inside pocket of Mr. Harlan's suit jacket. One paw scratched the wood stage. His hackles were up. He wasn't being playful, he wasn't being aggressive, he was being intentional. People started murmuring. Some thought it was a drill. Others assumed Jasper had picked up a strange scent. But for Emily, who had turned completely pale, it was something else. She knew exactly what Jasper had sensed, and she wasn't the only one. If you believe dogs have instincts humans should never ignore, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. Real stories that reveal the truth one bark at a time. Officer Miller, now visibly shaken, climbed onto the stage and clipped Jasper's leash. "Let's go, boy. Down." But Jasper wouldn't budge. His body leaned forward. His bark, urgent, emotional, echoed again. Something inside Miller told him not to force the dog down. Instead, he turned to Mr. Harlan. "Sir, mind emptying your pockets for me?" That's when Mr. Harlan's mask slipped. Just for a second. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. A flicker in his eye. "There's nothing in my pockets but my phone," he said with a forced chuckle. He reached in and pulled it out. "See?" But Jasper didn't react to the phone. His nose was still trained on the other pocket. Miller noticed. "Other side, please." Harlan hesitated, then slowly, reached into his inside jacket pocket. His fingers emerged holding something small, metallic. It was a flash drive. "Mind if I take a look at that?" Miller asked. There was a long pause. Then Harlan laughed, dry and strained. "It's just some old administrative files. You wouldn't find them very interesting." Miller took the drive anyway. He slipped it into a baggie and nodded to Jasper. "Let's go." Jasper finally jumped off the stage, but his eyes never left the principal. The assembly ended early. Parents were told there was a minor technical difficulty with the projector. No one wanted to make a scene. Emily slipped out the side door, alone, quiet. She didn't even glance back. But that night, when Officer Miller got home, he plugged in the drive. And what he found inside made him drop his coffee and call the FBI. Officer Miller couldn't sleep. The flash drive lay on his kitchen table like a ticking bomb. Jasper rested, at his feet, alert but calm, as if he knew something too heavy had finally been unearthed. The living room lamp cast a soft glow over the couch where Miller sat with his laptop open, cursor hovering over the open folder icon. He took a deep breath and clicked. The folder was simply named Archive. Inside were subfolders marked with dates, some going back 3 years. Each one had a handful of video files, silent clips, poorly lit, many angled from corners of rooms like surveillance footage. But it wasn't security footage. It was something else. The first video he clicked open showed the inside of what looked like the school's nurse's office. A girl, maybe 13, sat on the edge of the bed. She was crying, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Harlan entered the frame, offered her a tissue, sat too close. Miller slammed the laptop shut. His stomach twisted. His hand shook. Jasper whined and placed a paw gently on his leg, grounding him. The next morning, Miller handed the flash drive directly to his precinct captain with no sugarcoating. "I need this to go straight to cybercrime. It contains footage of minors in compromising situations, all filmed on school property, possibly blackmail material, possibly worse." He didn't use the word predator, but it was written all over his face. By the end of the day, the FBI had taken over the case, and the next morning, Principal Harlan didn't show up to work. At Mill Creek Middle, students were told the principal was taking a leave of absence. The vice principal, Mr. Landry, took over daily announcements trying to maintain normalcy. But it was already too late. Rumors spread like wildfire. Did Jasper attack him? Was he hiding drugs? Why'd they stop the ceremony? Emily. Carter fainted afterward. What's going on? No one had answers, but Jasper's name was on everyone's lips. Emily hadn't returned to school since the assembly. Her mother said she was sick, but Officer Miller knew better. He parked his cruiser outside their apartment complex and knocked on the door. It opened slowly. Emily's mother, pale and tired-looking, stood behind the screen. "Officer Miller, we're not really up for visitors." "I'm not here to push," he said gently. "Just wanted to check on Emily and thank her." "Thank her?" the woman repeated. "For being brave." Jasper only barks when he senses someone is in danger. And that day he was trying to protect your daughter. Silence. Then the door opened, wider. Emily sat cross-legged on the couch holding a stuffed lion, her knees pulled in tight. "I didn't tell him anything," she said softly, looking at Jasper. "But he knew. He always knew." Miller crouched beside her, Jasper wagging his tail just enough to make her smile. "You don't have to talk about anything you're not ready for," he said. "But I think you being here might help. A lot of other girls feel less alone." She looked up, finally meeting his eyes. "Do you believe me?" "Every word," he said. Emily nodded slowly, then in the quietest voice she whispered, "He made me promise not to tell anyone. He said if I did, I'd be expelled. That my mom wouldn't believe me. That he had photos." Miller swallowed hard. "He said no one would believe a weird girl with no friends, but Jasper believed me," she whispered, burying her face in the dog's fur. The investigation moved fast after that. 2 more flash drives were discovered, one hidden in a ceiling panel in the principal's office, the other inside a hollowed-out dictionary in the staff room. Each drive was worse than the last. Dozens of students. Footage spliced together with timestamps and notes. Mr. Harlan had been documenting, cataloging, and storing files like trophies. Some clips showed him asking invasive questions during private counseling sessions. Others were silent moments. Locker rooms, hallways, restrooms, violations layered one after another. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet he was gone. The school district issued a formal statement. "We are shocked and heartbroken by the allegations. Mill Creek Middle will remain closed until further notice while law enforcement continues their investigation. Our thoughts are with the families affected, but for students like Emily it wasn't enough. She had spent months afraid to speak up, thinking no one would believe her. And now that the monster was exposed, she felt the weight of other girls' silence on her shoulders. She wasn't the only one. One by one, more students came forward. A girl named Jenna admitted she stopped playing volleyball after being called into Harlan's office too many times. A boy named Marcus recalled seeing his friend enter the nurse's room crying and come out too quiet. And then there were the emails, recovered from a deleted inbox. Mr. Harlan had been sending himself encrypted messages titled "Confidential," for records only, full of notes about students' vulnerabilities. No dad, lonely, already depressed. Like he was building a database. The more they found, the more monstrous it became. But through all of it, Jasper stayed by Miller's side, attending interviews, comforting students, and even appearing on the local news. They called him the dog who saved a school. But for Emily, he was just the dog who listened. Late one evening, after a long day of interviews, Miller found Jasper sitting quietly by the living room window. He stared out into the dark, tail still, breathing calm. Miller sat beside him and rubbed his ears. "Think we'll find him, boy?" Jasper didn't bark. He didn't wag. He just leaned into Miller's leg like he was saying, "We're not done yet." It had been 10 days since Principal Harlan vanished. His house stood empty, blinds drawn, mailbox overflowing. His car, a navy blue Toyota Highlander, hadn't been seen since the day of the school assembly. Neighbors said he left for a conference in Seattle, but police knew better. They issued a bolo across 3 states, but Harlan wasn't just a man on the run. He was a man who knew how to disappear, and the evidence now suggested this wasn't the first time. At the Mill Creek Police Department, a temporary task force had taken over a back conference room. Walls were lined with photos, maps, and printouts of emails, phone logs, and bank statements. Detective Anna Reyes, recently pulled from narcotics, was now leading the search. She stood beside Officer Miller and pointed at the map with a red marker. "We have him on ATM surveillance here," she said, tapping a gas station in Boise, Idaho. "Used a card registered to a burner account. We also found a receipt for a motel 2 hours east of there. Checked in under a fake name, but facial match confirms it's him." Miller folded his arms, Jasper sitting obediently at his side. "So we're 2 steps behind," he muttered. "For now," Reyes said, "but not for long." Meanwhile, at home, Emily Carter sat cross-legged in her bedroom, scrolling through news articles on her tablet. Her name was never published, but she knew every detail in those headlines was about her. Mill Creek principal. Under FBI investigation. Survivors speak out. He told me to stay quiet. K-9 dog triggers investigation into school scandal. For the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible, but she did feel scared. Not of Harlan. Of what came next. "Do I have to go back to school when it opens again?" she asked her mom one night. Her mother paused. "I don't know, sweetie. Maybe not that school. But somewhere safe." Emily looked down at her hoodie sleeve. "Jasper made me feel safe. No one else did." Her mom reached over and took her hand. "He was watching when I wasn't. That dog is more than just smart, he's got a soul." Back at the precinct, a breakthrough finally came from an unexpected place. "Sir," a junior officer called, rushing into the room with a manila envelope. "We just got a tip from a woman in Missoula, Montana. Says she recognized Harlan. He applied to do tech support at her community center. Used a different name, but same face." Detective Reyes stood. "Get her on the phone, see what address he gave." The officer nodded and stepped out. Miller looked down at Jasper. The dog's ears perked. "We're getting closer," Miller said. The next day before sunrise, 2 unmarked SUVs pulled up quietly outside a modest cabin 30 minutes outside Missoula. Snow still clung to the tree roots. A faint column of smoke rose from the chimney. Inside one of the vehicles, Jasper sat poised in the back seat, eyes focused ahead. This was not like school patrol. This was different. He could feel the tension in Miller's grip, hear the stillness of the woods. Reyes spoke into her radio. "Unit 1 in position. Unit 2, confirm. Unit 2, green." She glanced back at Miller. "You ready?" He gave a single nod. "Let's end this." They approached, in silence, weapons drawn, boots crunching softly in the snow. Miller stayed a step behind with Jasper, who moved low and quiet beside him, every muscle ready. Reyes knocked firmly. "Police." Open the door. No answer. "Mr. Harlan, we know you're inside. Come out with your hands up." Still nothing. Then, a light flicked off inside the cabin. Jasper growled. Miller unclipped his leash. "Search!" And the dog was gone. He darted around the side of the cabin like a shadow, nose to the wind, ears locked forward. Within seconds, he barked, once, sharp and loud. "Back door," Miller shouted. They sprinted. Behind the cabin, a half-dug trench, cut into the earth. At the end of it, partially hidden by a blue tarp, was an open hatch leading into a storm cellar. Inside, boxes of canned food, a cot, and Harlan. He sat on a crate, hands raised, face pale. Jasper stood between him and the stairs, growling low and steady. "Don't move," Miller barked, weapon trained. "You're done." Harlan didn't resist, he didn't speak. But as they cuffed him and read his rights, Jasper sat at the top of the stairs, tail thumping once in the dirt as if to say, "Told you I'd find him." News broke within the hour. Fugitive principal captured in Montana. After K-9 leads search. School hero dog finds man behind child exploitation scandal. The community of Mill Creek erupted in both relief and disbelief. Parents gathered outside the shuttered school, holding signs reading "Justice for our kids" and "Thank you, Jasper." Emily watched it all on TV, and for the first time she smiled fully. A week later, the town held a small outdoor ceremony. Nothing fancy, just folding chairs, a podium, and a banner that read, "To those who protect the voiceless." Detective Reyes spoke first. Then Miller. Then Emily stepped up, hands shaking, but voice steady. "I was scared for a long time," she said. "Scared. No one would believe me. Scared of what would happen if I spoke. But Jasper didn't need me to explain, he just knew." She paused, looking down at the dog seated in front of the podium wearing a brand new badge on his vest. "He didn't just find a bad guy. He found me. He found all of us." Tears filled her mother's eyes. The crowd stood and applauded, and Jasper? He just wagged his tail. The news of Harlan's arrest felt like a long exhale the town had been holding in. At last, the man who haunted so many silent moments had been caught. But for Officer Miller, Detective Reyes, and the rest of the task force, something about the case still didn't sit right. It was what Reyes called the gap, a 5-year silence. 5 years before Harlan showed up at Mill Creek Middle School, his employment records were blank, no job, no trace, no explanation. And when a man like Harlan leaves no trail, it usually means there's something he wants to stay buried. 2 weeks after his arrest, Reyes sat across from Harlan in an FBI holding facility in Denver. He was no longer the slick, smooth-talking principal in a perfectly pressed blazer. He looked older, thinner, like a man used to controlling the narrative who had just realized the script was out of his hands. "We know about Mill Creek," Reyes said flatly. "We have the videos, the messages, the hidden drives. You'll spend the rest of your life behind bars for what you did there." Harlan said nothing. "But what I want to know," she continued, "is where you were before that. Because someone with your skills doesn't just vanish. You don't go from a nobody to a school principal overnight without help, or a reason." Still, he said nothing. Reyes leaned forward. "Help yourself for once in your miserable life. Tell us who helped you disappear. Tell us where the others are." His eyes flicked up, cold and measured. "You're not going to find them," he said softly. And that was the moment Reyes knew. There was more than just one predator. Miller stood in the hallway when she came out. "He said anything?" She shook her head. "No, but his eyes did. He's not alone. I think he was part of something bigger. A network. Or at the very least, someone helped him get those jobs and disappear when things got too hot." Miller clenched his jaw. "So, Mill Creek wasn't the first. Or the last," Reyes said grimly. They both turned to see Jasper sitting quietly near the wall. His eyes were alert, following their every word. Miller gave him a scratch behind the ears. "Looks like we've got more work to do, buddy." Back in Mill Creek, parents were still trying to process what had happened. Town meetings turned emotional. Some demanded answers from the school board. Others wanted to know how background checks could have missed someone like Harlan. But the real damage had already been done. No press conference, no policy change, no apology would undo what those kids had experienced. At home, Emily Carter had good days and bad days. Some mornings she'd wake up feeling strong, even hopeful. Other mornings the nightmares came back. Cold hands, locked doors, threats whispered through fake smiles. But there was one thing that never left her side. Jasper. Officer Miller had started bringing him over on Saturdays, letting Emily walk him through the park or brush his fur on the front porch. It wasn't therapy in the traditional sense, but somehow it worked better than anything else. "He doesn't see me as broken," she once told her mom. "He sees you as brave." Her mom replied. Then one Sunday morning, Miller's phone rang. "Officer Miller, this is Agent Dalton from FBI Records. We've found something you're going to want to see." Dalton explained that years ago, a small private school in Arizona had quietly fired a substitute teacher for inappropriate conduct. The teacher had been using a fake name, Mark Harwin, but when facial recognition compared old staff photos to recent mugshots, it was Harlan, and this time, the rabbit hole went deeper. Within days, Reyes and Miller flew to Tucson. The school, deserted and sun-bleached, had been shut down during the pandemic and never reopened. Boxes of old files had been left in storage units nearby. One unit, registered under the name M. Harwin, still had an active lease. Inside, under dusty tarps and moldy cardboard, they found binders of student photos, notes scribbled in shorthand, even a tattered school yearbook with several pages missing. And among the clutter, Jasper sniffed out something odd, an old duffel bag with a small compartment sewn into the lining. Inside, a black flip phone, long dead but carefully wrapped in a Ziploc. Back in the hotel that night, Miller charged the phone. There were only a few texts left in the inbox. Most had been wiped clean, but one thread, dated 8 years ago, stood out. Unknown number, you. Know the rule. If it gets messy, we move you. We've done it before, don't screw this one up. Harwin. Understood. I'll keep the files hidden. Unknown number. Burn the rest. Miller looked up at Reyes. This wasn't just
him.
Someone helped him cover it up, and they've done it more than once. Reyes's voice was tight. We're dealing with a pattern. He's not just a predator. He's part of a cycle. Back in Mill Creek, Emily received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed photo, a grainy black and white shot of her walking through the hallway of Mill Creek Middle, alone, taken from a high angle. On the back, one word was written in red marker, quiet. Her mother called the police immediately. Miller arrived within 10 minutes, Jasper at his side. Emily trembled as she handed him the envelope. It's him, she whispered. He's still trying to scare me. Miller examined the handwriting. No, he said after a moment. This isn't Harlan's. It's someone else. Reyes confirmed the same after forensics. Different ink, different print. Whoever had sent that message was still out there. A week later, Jasper did something strange. During a routine visit to the precinct, he sniffed the outer jacket of a file Reyes had just brought in from storage. His nose twitched, his ears stood straight, and then he barked. Once, then, again. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive. It was the same bark he gave the day of the assembly, the bark that started everything. Miller met Reyes's gaze. That's the same scent, he said slowly. The one he reacted to at school. It's not just Harlan. Someone else was there. Someone else was in that building. Reyes flipped open the file. Inside was a name that hadn't been connected to the case until now. Raymond Epps, district IT contractor, worked across 3 middle schools. Never formally employed at Mill Creek, but frequently listed on vendor sign-in logs. And the last time he was seen, 2 days after Harlan disappeared, there was a time when Raymond Epps was just another name in the background, an IT contractor for the school district. Never hired officially, never on staff photos, but his name showed up on vendor badges, help desk tickets, and maintenance logs across at least 3 schools, Mill Creek being one of them. No one paid him much attention. He didn't teach. He didn't coach. He fixed things. Computers, printers, security cameras. That last one, security cameras, was what made Reyes and Miller go quiet the moment they read his name. He had access to the entire school's video network, Reyes said, flipping through the logs. Maintenance reports show he upgraded the internal system about 6 months before Harlan started at Mill Creek. Miller nodded slowly, jaw tight. So he wasn't just fixing equipment, he was planting it. And Harlan was just the face. They sat in silence, the weight of the possibility settling in. What if Harlan was just one spoke in a larger wheel? What if this man, this Raymond Epps, was the one building the machine behind it all? Jasper, lying at Miller's feet, gave a low growl. The next morning, Reyes put out a quiet request to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. "We're looking at someone who's methodical, calculated, comfortable with tech, and likely extremely careful about remaining invisible," she told the analyst on the call. "He doesn't want attention, but he thrives in proximity to power." A few hours later, they received a partial address, an old utility bill from a trailer park in rural Utah. The name on the bill? R. Epps. But when they arrived, the trailer had already been cleared out. Dusty blinds, empty fridge. No footprints except one thing, an empty dog bowl in the corner. "Think he had a dog?" Miller asked. Reyes shook her head. "I think he wanted to be trusted." Back in Mill Creek, the community tried to return to normal, but fear lingered like fog that wouldn't burn off. Parents started organizing their own background checks on school staff. Security guards were added to all middle schools in the district. Emily Carter hadn't gone back to public school. Her mother enrolled her in an online program instead. But her healing came less from books and more from Jasper. One afternoon, she sat with Miller on the same front porch where it all started. Jasper lay between them, his nose twitching every so often at the breeze. "Do you think it's over?" Emily asked. Miller looked at her gently. "I think it's getting closer." Emily glanced down at Jasper and whispered, "He always knows, doesn't he?" Miller smiled. "Yeah, he really does." Then, on a Monday morning, a school janitor found something odd behind the library at Clearview Middle School, about 30 miles from Mill Creek. An unplugged trail camera, hidden behind the air vents. When Reyes and Miller arrived, Jasper immediately stiffened as they approached the back hallway where the camera had been mounted. He began sniffing along the baseboards. Then suddenly, he barked. 1, 2, 3 sharp barks, just like he did the day of the assembly. "Same scent," Miller said quietly. "It's him." The school board confirmed that Raymond Epps had done some minor security work at Clearview last year. No one thought to investigate further because technically he hadn't broken any laws. Until now. The camera had a built-in SD card. When techs pulled the files, they found hours of footage of locker rooms, nurses' stations, even the front office recorded at night. The timestamps matched weekends and holidays. "This guy's been watching for years," Reyes whispered. And nobody ever looked up. FBI agents dug deeper. They found that Raymond Epps had been linked to 5 different school districts over the last 10 years. Each one had records of technical assistance he'd provided, but almost none had kept surveillance archives from those years. The ones that did, they were missing large chunks of data. He had wiped them, not just once, repeatedly. "He's been scrubbing his own footprints like a ghost," Reyes told Miller. But he missed something. He forgot the one thing he couldn't erase. "Jasper," Miller said. They began to build a profile. Epps was never confrontational. He used access, not violence. He didn't manipulate people. He manipulated systems, cameras, file storage, even student data logs. And he had been doing it from the shadows, moving town to town, always just before anyone caught on. And then he met Harlan. Emails recovered from the flash drive showed coded language between the two. "The system's in place. You have full access. Just be smart about it this time." Reyes stared at the monitor. This wasn't about Harlan's urges. This was about infrastructure. He provided the means. Harlan provided the mask. Miller looked down at Jasper. "He barked at Harlan," he said slowly. "But maybe he was trying to warn us about who was behind him." Days later, the FBI located another residence, a small cabin outside of Flagstaff, Arizona, rented under a fake name linked to one of Epps's known aliases. They went in at dawn. No sign of him. But in the crawl space beneath the floorboards, they found hard drives, dozens of them, labeled by city, by year, by school name. Mill Creek was one of them. So was Clearview. So was a school in Nevada that had burned down 3 years ago. It was a digital graveyard of stolen innocence. Miller stared at the shelves of drives. "How long has he been doing this?" he asked. Reyes shook her head. "Too long." They bagged every device and sent them to Quantico. It would take months, maybe years, to recover it all. But the work had begun. That night, Miller sat on his front steps with Jasper by his side. The sky was clear. The town was quiet. "Remember the day we met, boy?" he asked. Jasper lifted his head. "You were just supposed to help with school safety, crowd control, lockdown drills." He scratched behind Jasper's ear. "But you saw something no one else did. You saw what was wrong, before anyone even knew where to look." The dog leaned in closer. "You didn't just stop a man, Jasper, you cracked open a system." The first frost settled on Mill Creek the night the town finally exhaled. After months of chaos, investigation, and the slow unraveling of a horror no one saw coming, things were just beginning to feel normal again. But it wasn't the old kind of normal. It was a new one shaped by questions, one built on awareness, and one where a German shepherd named Jasper had changed the town forever. In Washington, D.C., at an FBI press conference, Special Agent Dalton stood behind the podium speaking to reporters with the steady tone of someone used to delivering grim news. "We have now confirmed that Raymond Epps operated under at least 7 aliases across 5 states. His network of unauthorized surveillance spanned a decade. The digital evidence recovered so far links him to more than a dozen school districts. Investigations are ongoing. We urge any educational institutions who worked with freelance IT consultants in the last 10 years to come forward." Reporters fired questions. "Is Epps in custody? What's being done for the victims? How did this go unnoticed for so long?" But no one had an answer for the most painful question of all. Why didn't anyone listen until the dog barked? At Mill Creek Middle School, now permanently closed, a construction crew removed the rusted school sign. The building would be demolished and eventually replaced by a public garden and memorial. The idea came from Emily Carter, whose letter to the school board had gone viral online. "I don't want the place where he hurt me to be a building anymore," she wrote. "I want it to be something that grows." The board agreed. Officer Miller took Jasper to the site one last time. The school was surrounded by yellow fencing, but the parking lot was still open. Miller parked under the same tree where he used to patrol carpool duty. Jasper hopped out and immediately began sniffing the air. They walked slowly toward the front doors. They were locked now permanently, but Jasper stopped at the steps, sat down, and stared straight ahead, calm, composed, alert, as if waiting for something. "Nothing to find anymore, buddy," Miller whispered, crouching next to him. "You already found it all." Jasper let out a soft whine and leaned into him. Later that week, a town ceremony was held at the new Civic Center. People packed the auditorium, students, teachers, law enforcement, and families. In the center of the stage stood a large framed photo of Jasper in his black K9 vest, ears perked, eyes locked forward. Emily walked to the podium. She was taller now, stronger. Her voice no longer trembled. When Jasper barked at Mr. Harlan, it didn't just save me. It saved everyone who never found the words to speak, she began. He reminded us that sometimes the truth doesn't come in a scream. It comes in silence, and in growls, and in the quiet things we ignore. She paused. Jasper listened, when no one else did. And more importantly, he believed us. The room fell still. A tear slid down Miller's cheek. After the applause, the mayor presented Jasper with the town's first ever Medal of Honor for Animal Service. The plaque read, "For instinct beyond training, for courage without question, for giving a voice to the voiceless." Jasper wagged his tail once as the medal was gently placed around his neck. He didn't understand awards. He didn't care for ceremonies. But he knew love. And right now, Love surrounded him. Reyes approached Miller as the ceremony wound down. Still no sign of Epps, she said softly. Interpol's involved now. We're tracking movement across Europe, but he's slippery. Miller nodded. You think we'll ever catch him? She shrugged. Maybe not. But we made him run. We ruined his silence. And maybe that's enough. For now. They looked at Jasper, surrounded by kids kneeling to pet him, taking selfies, placing stickers on his vest. Do dogs ever know what they start? Reyes asked. Miller smiled. I think Jasper knew the second he saw Emily. He knew something was wrong. He didn't need evidence. He just saw her. In the weeks that followed, several school districts launched new initiatives inspired by Jasper's story. Anonymous student reporting platforms, mandatory trauma training for staff, independent audits of surveillance systems. But more important than policy were the conversations. Parents started asking questions. Students started speaking up. Teachers began listening differently. A cultural shift had begun, not because of a law, but because of a bark. On a quiet Saturday morning, Emily and her mom took Jasper on a walk through the park. Leaves crunched under their feet. A gentle wind pushed golden light through the trees. Did you ever think one dog could do so much? Her mom asked. Emily smiled, brushing her hand across Jasper's fur. He didn't just save me, she said. He reminded people to look closer, to listen. Jasper trotted ahead, tail swaying, his nose to the ground, always searching, always watching, always protecting. And maybe that's the lesson we all forget sometimes. That truth doesn't always show up wearing a badge. That not every hero speaks our language. That some of the bravest souls walk on four legs with no need for medals, just the chance to be heard. So now, dear reader, when was the last time you trusted your gut, or listened to someone who didn't know how to ask for help? What would you do if the dog barked at someone you trusted?